Hey, it's Molly. Welcome back to my channel as we're going to discuss the Scorpio Solar Eclipse happening on October 25th, 2022 at 4:50 a.m. That's Mountain Time, as this chart is set in Calgary, Alberta, just to spice it up a bit here. And we are going to look at the energies happening during this new moon solar eclipse cycle. So the energies are happening at 2 degrees of Scorpio in your chart. So identify that by house placement. And you'll see here that we have the sun and the moon, which makes it a new moon solar eclipse, as every solar eclipse is. And the sun and the moon are joined by Venus, almost exactly conjunct at 2 degrees 39 minutes of Scorpio. So this right here is a fascinating energy because Venus is not in her strength in Scorpio. She's actually in the energetic domain of Mars. And she is working with the sun and the moon, but because it's a new moon, the sky is the darkest. And this is at the beginning of Scorpio, right? Scorpio begins at 0 degrees. So we are really entering a beginning phase, something new emerging that involves this Venus energy and where she is going to enter into a big transformational energy process as this solar eclipse unfolds. And what we are looking at as well is because it's the beginning of Scorpio, the end of Scorpio is the Phoenix rising. This is the beginning of something coming to your awareness that you're going to be transforming and moving through as Scorpio season unfolds. And it directly involves this Venus imprint. And because this Venus energy in Scorpio tends to be struggling, if you will, there could be something that you're seeing for the first time in your world, in your life, perhaps in your soul journey, around how the lower expressions or the hidden energies of Venus have been operating within you, and what you're ready to evolve and transform, because she is a big player here in this solar eclipse. So what we have is the beginning of something transforming within your psyche, within your unconscious, within deep levels of your being that are actually clearing out what you're no longer meant to take forward. Now, the south node is not pictured, but the south node is at 13 degrees of Scorpio. Here's the north node. And so we are working with the south node, although it is, again, 13 degrees would be out of orb since it's 11 degrees away. But within the Scorpio areas of your chart, there's something that you're transforming powerfully that you weren't aware of that is a fear. And that fear comes up during the first decan, the first 10 degrees of Scorpio, so that you can see it for what it is. You can identify it. Then you work with it. Then you investigate it. Then you get curious about that energy and what it has brought into your world and what has manifested. Now, this is actually powerful relationship dynamics, as Scorpio is energy that merges together. And it's where we go into knowing ourselves in deeper ways. Scorpio goes into the areas of our emotional truth, our vulnerability, our sexuality, our intimacy. Scorpio goes into understanding, where did that originate from? And is that truly mine? So this is basically a beginning point of evaluating, assessing, and feeling into what energy is yours and what have you absorbed from others, and where has it set up a potential power dynamic that is meant to feel safe around other people's perhaps controlling energies. Now, of course, this could be flipped, where if you have the energy signature of always needing power, being in control, then maybe, this is going to bring up some different things for you around those dynamics. But this is the beginning point of looking at are energies with others that we have taken on that have challenged our sense of empowerment and to reclaim what is true for you, what you're really wanting and needing in relationships and in connections that support you, instead of perhaps feeling like there's some kind of locked control dynamics that have kept you in some kind of exchange with people that feels like an ongoing power struggle. Now, obviously, this is a huge topic, and there's many tangents that can come from this. But again, it's at the beginning of Scorpio. There's something you're meant to see or connect with in a new way, in a higher way, that also relates to what your soul is karmically clearing out. Now, when the South Node gets to 2 degrees of Scorpio in 2023, the middle of 2023, I believe it will be late May, June 2023. That's when whatever begins at this eclipse is really cleared out. Okay, so that's important to watch for the timeline. So this eclipse in October 25th, brings something up that you're meant to understand involving Venus. I'm going to talk about that some more, but it's when the South Node gets to this 2-degree point in 2023 that then the karma's cleared, then it's moving out, then there's things that are finalized, and you could feel that it's truly deeply shifted. So keep that in mind in terms of what this cycle is bringing up, which is going to be very powerful and strong for you if you have planets or points within this first decan of Scorpio. So I'm going to say between 0 to 9 degrees of Scorpio is when the energy is the most intense. Now, the Venus influence, because Venus is weaker in Scorpio, this is where she's learning to love herself, but she has to unravel what she was told, taught, or experienced from others that she thought was her sense of self. So Venus is the furthest away from her home sign of Taurus, where she's ruling the North Node. So she's ruling the North Node, but here she is in the underworld of Scorpio, seeing a different side of herself, seeing her shadow, seeing her fears, seeing her insecurities, really getting into anything around her self-value or self-worth that she picked up from others who were more powerful, who had more influence on her before she knew what she was worth, before she understood a higher love. So what I'm getting around this is that this is where we could be coming into new awareness around definitions of love that aren't true to your heart, that don't work for you anymore, that aren't fulfilling, that aren't about your truth. And this is where you could be doing some deep work, deprogramming and deconditioning around what you thought love was, but what you've been learning, especially through that North Node in Taurus, that is bringing us to a higher awareness of what that is based on our own terms. Because Taurus is about our self-reliance and being able to stand strong in your own energy, whereas this Scorpio energy is what we have absorbed or what has been brought into our energy field that we're understanding has served a purpose but is no longer connected to our truth. This solar eclipse cycle is bringing you into a new truth around the Venus energies of love, connection, acceptance, showing up with vulnerability, authenticity, showing up in your strength, in your power, essentially reconnecting you to the higher expressions of Scorpio, which is fierce. Scorpio can be fierce. And when it comes from love, there's a fierce love component, a fierce self-love component that's being realized, activated, and ideally showing you that what is meant to go has also been a gift. Now, Scorpio is a fixed sign and it can hold on, grasp on. But part of the transformation of Scorpio is in how you're able to let go of what isn't true for you and reclaim a stronger emotional truth. So there's a strong element here of really tapping into your own emotional truth and what that means for you. Now, Venus also relates to not only our self-worth, self-value, accepting ourselves, it's our creativity, it's our ability to receive and be seen. It's also connected to relationships with females, with feminine energies, with friendships and sisters. And it's also connected to money, which is rooted in our self-worth. So any of these could be powerful themes for you. And because it's initiating a transformational process, this is where you could see with new eyes what is true for you and tap in deeper to an energy that maybe has been dormant, that you can't deny, that's rising up, And of course, this can bring up financial issues at this time, things that you need to let go of to make room for the new value system and the new things that are truer for you. So there is always a heavy component of Scorpio too, of kind of this push-pull internally of what you don't want to let go of. I don't think I'm ready to release that. I don't know if I can let that person go. I don't know if I'm ready to sell this car, this house, this whatever, because there's something that you're energetically tied to. And Scorpio can show you what those energy ties are and then ask you to really get clear if it's still true for you. So it's a big energy. And, I was noticing too, okay, we're at 2 degrees of Scorpio here. All the other planets are further along in the zodiac except for this Jupiter retrograding back at 0 degrees of Aries. And so there's a quincunx here, or an inconjunct in this Jupiter and Aries, which is opening up the new starts, the new path, the new parts of yourself. And the inconjunct with these 3 planets in Scorpio is the discomfort of other people. What are they saying? What are they going to think? What are they perceiving? It's almost like the lower vibes of Scorpio where you get locked into, well, what will other people think or say or feel? And as I step into more of my truth, what is not in resonance with that anymore? So these 3 planets and this Jupiter at 0 degrees of Aries are at the very beginning of both of these astrology signs, and they're both ruled by Mars. So you have Jupiter and Aries ruled by Mars. You have Scorpio ruled by both Mars and Pluto. So let's go to Mars, because here is Mars moving very slowly at 25 degrees of Gemini and preparing to station retrograde about 5 days or so after this eclipse. And yet this Mars is supported through a trine with Mercury in Libra and is making this wider trine to Saturn, now direct at 18 degrees of Aquarius, almost 19 degrees. And I'm considering this a trine because of how Mars is going so slow and is going to be retrograding back and will reconnect with Saturn through the retrograde. So they're still in a conversation about the long-term plan. And this is where Mars is actually working for Saturn in what needs to change in our daily lives, in our daily immediate environments that support the long-term trajectory. Because Saturn in Aquarius is opening up our energies to the future that's calling to you, but how do you get there? How do you put things in place that support where you're going? And Mars is essentially working for Saturn and helping us really look at what we need to reprioritize, reconsider, and even reinvent to support the long-term plans where you want your life to go next. Saturn is also about what needs to go, what no longer fits, what you're cutting out. And so this is also where this Mars is like, oh, well, I thought I would take off and do this. Now I'm slowing down and I'm reconsidering my choices. I'm reconsidering what I thought would work. And now Mars in Gemini, with the retrograde coming up, is going to be making different choices. Although hopefully he's smarter and is like, okay, let me actually just sit with this so that I'm not being hasty, which Gemini can be. Gemini can have a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts, a lot to say. Mars there activates all that. And before you know it, you put your foot in your mouth and you're chewing on your shoe and you're like, well, okay, maybe that wasn't the best plan of action. So we're reassessing our plan of actions and what will ultimately be in alignment with what you're building and where you're going for the long term. And then we also have this trine with Mercury at 22 degrees of Libra, which would be the conversations and assessing the pros and cons. I could do this, I could do that. Sometimes this Mercury in Libra gets stuck in analysis paralysis of I don't know what to choose. Both options are good. And then you say, oh, but I don't want it to be bad for this person, or I don't want it to be harmful, or this person did a really good job and I want to reward them. Like this energy, it gets all caught up in others at times that keeps the analysis going or the evaluation. But the connection with Mars is helping to look at, well, what can move? But also because Mars is going retrograde, there's something to where you're really looking at, well, what would work in my daily life and what would work for the long term. So this is a grand trine here in the air signs, the third one of October. And this is the conversations, the people, the ideas, the projects, and looking at what is really going to make sense for the long term. Because this Saturn is the strongest of these energies. Mercury moves on and will make a square to this Pluto. And Pluto is also important since Pluto is a ruler of Scorpio. And so this Pluto is never returning back to 26 degrees of Capricorn. He's finishing up business at 26 degrees of Capricorn. And he's going to make some executive decisions. And those executive decisions are going to be delivered to Mercury, who wants to work with other people, right? And consider how it's going to affect people. And this Pluto in Capricorn is like, this is what's been decided. I'm laying it down, final decision, this is what's happening. So this Mercury could also have, it's almost like some hard conversations to let people know, this is the end of the line. This isn't going to go any further. I'm so sorry. Thank you for your contribution. Like I'm thinking of this in a workplace setting where there could be some difficult conversations that are needed. But because this Mercury works with the trine, I feel like there could be also something where people can feel the freedom to go to what they need to do next, what their best path is. So if you are looking at hard conversations that you need to have, especially around this eclipse, end of October into November, you're making some hard choices potentially that are going to affect other people, but they're going to have another option open up for them. There's openings here. So yes, there's a door closing with the square to Pluto, but then there's something else that comes up, and that alone could help just feel like, okay, there is justice here. There are next steps. Now, we still have a few things in play during this eclipse energy that are important. So getting back to this Mars in Gemini, Mars in Gemini is going to be making an ongoing square to Neptune at 23 degrees of Pisces retrograde. And because Mars is going slow and stationing retrograde the end of October, Mars is now going to be traveling within about a 3-degree orb of Neptune for an extended period of time. So October, November, even into December. And this Neptune influence is very strong, and it removes, it dissolves. It takes away what the ego wants, what the body wants, what the mind is deciding. So I know that is interesting based on what I just discussed with you about this grand trine and how Mars is working well with Saturn. And so what we have an understanding perhaps of what matters, where you want to go, what the long term is. And Neptune is not letting us tap into the how fully and completely. How is it going to come together? How is it going to line up? So this Neptune squaring Mars in Gemini is removing the details. There's so much in motion, perhaps. There's a lot changing. There's a lot shifting, that it's a huge trust that where I need to go is coming together, and it's going to show up. I just don't know how. And this is where we have to really calm the mind around the anxiety, and calm the mind and the body with any nervous energy, that worry, anything that ramps up the nervous system. So this means too that Mars squaring Neptune wins. Not to spoil the end, but Neptune is your spiritual self, your higher self. Your higher self is seeing a plan that Mars isn't tuned into yet. Because this Mars in Gemini is your neighborhood, is street level, is what you're doing day to day. And this Neptune is way out there in the cosmos, seeing the bigger terrain of it all. As you drive around in your car or go to the bus stop or walk around, and you're very much in even the 3D experience and the human experience of the mind and what we're looking at. This Neptune is holding something that we're not able to connect with yet. It's almost like, I can't touch it. I don't know what it is yet. So there can be confusion between two parts of your chart. In this example, it's between the 6th house and the 10th house, right? So this would be confusion in job or work, or where is this going? I don't know. I'm just going to show up every day and do what I need to do, but I can feel bigger changes are happening. And I feel like that's what we are collectively sensing. It's almost like in the background, there's big things happening. There's big changes unfolding, and we can't see it, but we sense it, we feel it, and intuitively we're dialed in, but we're also still very much here, living our lives, picking up the mail, taking the kids to school, going to university, right? Going about your daily life, even as some bigger changes are underway. The other big energy in this chart has to do with coming back to the Saturn, which is still in a square to Uranus there at 17 degrees of Taurus retrograde. Now, Saturn is direct, and Saturn is having more conversations. So Saturn is the stronger energy right now in October and into November. But this Uranus is still vibrating to Saturn. And this Uranus is the new. It's the rebellion, the revolution, the disruption, the chaos. What's shaking the ground, the earthquakes, the eruptions, what's shaking within us, the electrical storms, so to speak, or the new cosmic openings that are meant to come through. And we know that these two were exact, Uranus and the North Node, back in July, August, but they're still in conversation. And this because this is a significant life change. This is a significant sense of your self-awareness, your new values, the new parts of your life that are ready to come through. And perhaps you are feeling that, but there's something here where, because Uranus is retrograde, it could be something that you're really aware of inside of you, even as you have a lot of work to do and responsibilities to attend to. There's something about this energy that you could have felt how much you've changed and shifted in the past 6 months, even this year, whatever timeline. this energy has been working with us big time. So wherever you have this in your chart, whichever house, it's honoring the new parts of yourself that are awakening to more, even amongst the big world changes and collapses and the structures that are falling. This energy is birthing, and we are birthing amongst chaos. And so on that note, because this part of our energy, this part of ourselves has shown us what is emerging and where we need to go next. It's like a cosmic calling. Uranus conjunct the North Node, a cosmic calling. We think of the North Node too as fate, as destiny, but of course, human free will is also in play in that equation. So it's sort of like you could have some kind of cosmic calling, openings, destiny, fate, all those things revealed to you. And yet these are in the fixed signs that can resist the change. It's like the 11th hour. It's like you are the very last person to jump on the train as it pulls out of the station. Like that's kind of the fixed signs. If they budge at all, it's because there's been resistance to the change. And then finally, it's like if you don't get on the train is gone, the opportunity's gone, you've missed this. There's something else that will come through the station, but this is a last call. And are you ready for that change? So that leads us back to the fact that this Taurus ruled by Venus connecting directly with the solar eclipse in Scorpio is showing you what needs to change within your own energy field, that maybe you've been afraid of the change. You don't know what happens next. It's something that could feel scary. It could be something where you're looking at your deeper belief systems around self-worth. Am I worthy of having the life I've dreamed of? Am I worthy of establishing and creating the life that is meant for me? And so this is a big clearing out, facing our fears head on. But there's courage in that. Remember, Scorpio's fierce. And when you're like, yes, I can handle this. I can go into these parts of myself and I'm not afraid to cry. I'm not afraid to let it out. I'm not afraid to move through the full process, which is beginning here. So we are facing some parts of ourselves that are meant to beautifully support our truth now, because we have had a lot evolve since the last eclipse season in late April and mid-May of this year. And we still are moving through these eclipse energies into 2023. So just know that this is going to be an interesting and dynamic solar eclipse as it relates to feminine energy within each of us, within what we have limited in our self-worth, our ability to love and receive, big energies maybe around, finances, money. Of course, this would relate to the economy and having to let things go. I mean, could be a lot of cancellations or things that you're no longer wanting to pay money towards. Scorpio is our financial obligations, and where we have to pay the mortgage, pay the rent, pay the lease, pay for the car. It's the money that we make to cover our expenses. And there could be a big reevaluation of that, especially as we move into holiday season and then into the first quarter of next year. So there's definitely a financial ripple effect here, financial awareness, where your money comes in, where it's going out, if it's working for you, or what needs to be changed so that it is something that you feel powerful about. Also, this is the solar eclipse. And so 2 weeks later, we're going to have the Taurus lunar eclipse that is conjunct Uranus at 16 degrees, also the North Node. So whatever you're realizing, you're facing, you're looking at in the Scorpio energies, the Taurus lunar eclipse is going to support with the next dynamic changes and moving forward into what is now simple. Okay, so Taurus wants things to be simple. Scorpio is complex. And so what has become too much, too complicated, a burden, and the eclipse is showing you that within your life, within yourself, within your energy, so that you can simplify, and that perhaps by the Taurus lunar eclipse, or at least when that cycle begins, there is a new freedom in your lifestyle, or a freedom in what matters, because you're now in that frequency of what is right for you, what is true for you. There's a lot in this chart. There's a lot going on here. And it does have an intensity to it. And as I mentioned, we will have another eclipse in Scorpio and another eclipse in Taurus in 2023. And I actually now have that full program available for you, as I do every year now, where I give you the full astrology of the year ahead, including the upcoming eclipses, including all the Mercury retrogrades, the Venus retrograde in Leo, OMG. It works with the nodes of fate 3 times, and it works with them in very fascinating ways. We look at how the energy signature changes in March of 2023, only 6 months away, only 6 months, where we're going to have Saturn enter Pisces and Pluto enter Aquarius. So 2023 has the biggest astrology since 2020. And I know you're like, but Molly, it's already been big. Like, well, I know it has in many ways, but comparatively, 2023 is like bam, bam, bam. So please check that out. I'll put the link below the video. This is a program where you're designed to follow along and see what comes up in your chart during these big changes. And that's really why I offer this information, is so that you can see it in your own astrology chart. You know the themes, or you get a heads up on the changes, the shifts, the evolution. So this energy of this solar eclipse is powerful and big and is transforming us. Always a key word with Scorpio is transformation. It's transforming our Venus themes, and it's transforming us ultimately to help us feel freer and truer in where we're going and what that cosmic calling is as we move into more of these new energies coming onto the planet. So thank you so much for joining me for this video. I will be back to discuss that Taurus lunar eclipse soon. Please check out the 2023 program. It's only $33 when you use coupon code HELLO2023. So I'll see you back here soon, and I'm wishing you a beautiful Scorpio solar eclipse.